Coming up next, I'm going to make a comparison with niche fragrances in the niche fragrance world to micro brand watches from the watch collecting world. I know a lot of you out there collect watches in addition to fragrances, and so this is something that I think there's a good comparison, and wanted to talk about this a little bit, and hopefully you guys find it interesting, so stay tuned. Welcome back, everybody, to Joel the Nose, and today I'm going to do a little bit of a different video. This is one that I've been thinking about doing for a little while because I noticed, a number of you have commented on my watches. Obviously, I kind of, well, not obviously, but I like fashion, I like style. It's one of the reasons why I love fragrances. To me, it's another piece of fashion that makes us, gives us our individuality, which for me is important. So anyways, one of the things I've always loved are watches. And I've typically always, not collected, I don't have a big watch collection, but I've typically always worn watches that are different. And so I found it interesting that I've had watches much longer than I was into the niche fragrance world. The niche fragrance world I just got into about 4 years ago when I stumbled into Osme Perfumery one day about 4 years ago. But what I found over the years now, as I've gotten even more into watches, for example, in the last year, is the correlation or the similarities between the niche fragrance world and the micro brand world. So let me just give a quick comparison and definition of the two. And hopefully you guys like this video. If you do, I can maybe mix in some more videos talking about watches. If not, if you guys hate it, let me know in the comments. By the way, if you haven't already subscribed, please subscribe. I really appreciate the support. So what am I gonna do? First, let me talk about niche fragrances. As you can see here, I have the Peccato Originale, the Italian niche house. This is Mastro del Cuore. I'm saying Cuore. I always mispronounce it. Mastro del Cuore, which is master of the heart. It's one of my favorite new niche fragrances. It's got like a mate tea in there. It's got some spicy cinnamon. It's just a beautiful fragrance. But I love the niche fragrance world, and typically, what do I define niche? There's no one perfect definition of niche fragrance. In my mind, and I'm not gonna say you're wrong or this or that, this is what I typically define a niche fragrance, and that is something that's gonna typically be a house that is smaller, could be independent. It's not a designer house, it's independent of a big label, and I define it typically as going to be something that's of higher quality than a designer house. Not always. There's a lot of great designer fragrances, so don't get me wrong, and I'm not poo-pooing them. But they're typically going to spend more money on the creation of the fragrance and the materials because they spend a lot less on marketing. If you study fragrances and you read books on it and you read the great perfumers, these are just facts. About 70% to 75% of the cost of a designer fragrance is the markup for advertising. So that's the part that goes to the department store, it goes to advertising, media. That markup is huge. So what a niche house does is they don't have that because their marketing is directly through their website, through word of mouth, or through specialty boutique shops like Osme Perfumery. Now, nowadays you have hybrid niche perfumers. For example, I would consider Parfums de Marly, they're kind of like a hybrid now because they started out as a pure niche fragrance, but now you can buy them in Nordstrom's, Saks Fifth Avenue, and other places, right? Same with, for example, maybe Serjoff or, for example, Montal, you can get them at Saks. So they're kind of a hybrid, but I'm gonna stick with the basic definition. So for example, Peccato Originale, or another Italian niche house, one of my favorites, Masque Milano. This is Mandala, one of my all-time favorite fragrances. Oh, it's this beautiful incense accord. Anyways, so they're going to typically put more care into the bottles. They're going to have typically a better juice inside the bottle because they can put more money into that because they don't have to put that all into the marketing. So their channels, again, are different channels of distribution. That's typically what I'm going to label as a niche fragrance. And most times they're also going to be more expensive than your typical designer house. Now, how does that compare to a micro brand? micro brand, and let me take this watch off. For those of you who can see, this is a watch that I got recently. It's called Laurier. Laurier is a New York watch company, and this, you can see it. I get a lot of compliments. People, often think this is a much, much, much more expensive watch. This watch retails for around $500. It's an automatic watch, which means it's not a quartz. So it moves by mechanical movements, by the movement of your wrist, by winding. But these are really popular now, meaning micro brand. Micro brand, to me, is the equivalent of niche. What are they? They're smaller, independent watch companies. A lot of them have popped up in the last 10 years. And what they've done is they've cut out the retail markup, just like the niche fragrance world. So they sell their watches typically through online. Again, you can see it, and you can see the band. The bracelet is a very nice bracelet here. And again, let me just show you. I love this watch. It's really beautiful. So it's not glaring on you there. This is, by the way, a 39 millimeter. So 39 millimeter is a relatively medium to maybe a little bit smaller depending on your wrist size. I have small wrists, so this fits perfectly on my wrist. So they are going to be, again, micro brands are typically houses that are independent. They're relatively new, much like niche houses. They've raised money either through Kickstarter campaigns or private investment or whatever it may be, maybe just friends and family, and they put out watches, and they usually put out limited run, much like niche fragrances. So a lot of times you'll have limited run watches. They'll make a bunch, a certain amount, they'll sell them, and then they're gone, and they go on to the next. And often they can be hard to come by, and they're typically only sold directly through their website or maybe through other kind of boutique online websites. There's a websites like Teddy Balisare, who's a big YouTube reviewer, and other sites like that. So the similarities are very same. They are high quality. If you look at them, if you go to a high quality micro brand like Laurier is a very well respected micro brand. I would liken it to a Masque Milano or a Peccato Originale, or I don't know, go to Desired by Elisire. And that is the big difference. Now, as again, comparison to say, this is just, actually it's not that super cheap, but this is a Nixon sports watch. I use this for surfing, it's for surfing. This is a Yema watch. This is a sport watch, it's a chronograph. It could be considered maybe a micro brand. Yema's been around a lot longer. They're kind of more like hybrid. So Yema to me is not exactly a micro brand, but they're not a big watch famous company like a Rolex or an Omega or a Longines or whatever. Those to me are the equivalent of, for example, would be Dolce & Gabbana. Dolce & Gabbana, their private line. This is a high-end designer house. That would be kind of like a Longines or maybe an Omega or, one of those, I guess maybe even Rolex. Obviously not nearly as expensive as those watches, but you get the comparison. So those are high-end designer fragrances. Tom Ford private label, again, that would be kind of in the equivalent of a high-end watch company. And then you've got the designer watches, which are, say, for example, the low to mid-range Seiko watches. Seiko also makes a lot of really nice watches. They're great watches, by the way. And then you have the micro brands, which are really out and popular now. And I'm really digging, researching and finding more about the micro brands because I like individual style. I like things that are different. I like finding things that not everybody has. Even though this may look like a higher end watch, I like the fact that not a lot of people own this, and that's how I feel about niche fragrances. So I think there's this really direct correlation, and that's why I wanted to do this video kind of talking about micro brand watches and niche fragrances, the similarities, and I want to know your guys' opinion. For those of you who are watch fans and watch collectors, and I know there's a lot of you who watch my channel, and if you go into these Facebook forums, you see a lot of people will post pictures of their scent of the day with their watch of the day right next to each other. So if you like this video and you want to see more videos, I can definitely kind of go into more videos on watches. If not, fine. Either way, if you guys say, hey, no, just keep it pure, only fragrances, I get it, and that's what we'll stick with. But I do enjoy talking about watches. And by the way, here's I forgot to show you this one. Here is a nice Breitling. This is probably the nicest watch I own. I got this about almost 20 years ago now. This is a vintage Breitling watch. So this would be the equivalent of, again, Breitling is a high-end designer brand. It would be the equivalent of a Tom Ford or a Dolce & Gabbana private label or a high-end Chanel fragrance. So there you have it. This is Joel the Nose. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope, again, you found this kind of entertaining or useful, or at least interesting. Maybe for those of you who don't know about watches and you're just hearing about micro brands and you're kind of learning about the niche world, this might be informative for you. I hope it was. But I look forward to talking to you guys more. Thanks for watching. Peace and love.